It's July 20th, 2020. I'm Linda, and today I'm going to show you what's new around my quirky quarter acre. This is not new, but as usual, the girls are being nosy. We finally got some progress on the melons, y'all. There's a melon. And right in here, there's another one. And there's a teeny tiny one. And there's someone investigating. The green pumpkin is getting bigger and bigger. And we've got some green pumpkins of a fair size right here. The biggest new project that I did in the last couple of weeks is to set up these barrel planters. They're actually not barrels. They're not wood, but they are the one that I showed you last time where I had gotten 3 new ones. And when I got up to the register, they rang up half price. So I went back and got a few more, and I moved the 2 that I had around front and set them out like this. They are spaced so that the lawnmower can go in between them. And this, I'm thinking, may well be my herb garden next year, or at least the majority of my herb garden. I'm pretty sure I have more than 10 herbs that I want to plant that I don't have a space for yet. But I got the potting soil and got these pots. And so I'll show you what I have planted. These are the new pepper plants. They are the sweet yellow stuffing peppers, but they're not growing very much, and I don't know what's going on with those guys. It's certainly been hot enough for them, but even in the starter cells they didn't do so great, and the first ones that I started actually died, so I'm not sure whether they're going to actually make anything or not, but I'll let them go for now. This was the pot that I had chamomile in, and the chamomile did not come up. I am going to try it again in the spring because I really want to have chamomile, but for some reason it just didn't succeed this year. Now next year this may come up with chamomile. If those seeds have been in there for a year, who knows? But I do have more seeds just in case. This poor little empty looking pot is where I put my comfrey cuttings. I am not sure at all if these are going to grow. I guess I was expecting them to be as fast as the horseradish coming up, but they just haven't been. Now when I put the cuttings in here, I had them in a smaller pot for a little while, and they did have some roots on them, but so far I haven't seen any green above the soil. I'm hoping that they'll take off. This is the oregano that was around front in the shade, and you can see where when I first moved it back here, it got pretty red, and I think it was sunburnt because it just wasn't used to the full sun and the heat. But here, there's little green coming out, so I'm sure it'll be fine. And here's the New Mexico chili pepper, which is finally starting to get some size. I don't know why this one is growing so slowly. It's maybe it's too humid. Maybe it really is a desert plant. Now last year the chili pepper grew fine, so I really don't know. The pot at the bottom left has the tansy in it, which is finally taking off and getting taller. I'm not sure if it'll have time to bloom this year, but I'm hoping that I can get it established at least. I do have a few more seeds of that as well, so if it dies off in the winter and doesn't come back, I'll be able to replant that. It's just such a pretty little flower. I think it will bring in a lot of pollinators too. In the back, there is the sweet basil with the purple basil. On the top right is the status, which doesn't look so good. I think maybe the change in the sunlight has been too harsh for it. But they're just flowers anyway, and I'm going to plant herbs there next year, so I don't think it matters too much at this point. And in the other pot, which is on the bottom right, is the peppermint. My neighbor said she wanted a cutting of it, and so I got one for her, and it's in the pot getting established, and then I will take it down to her. And this last one is the hollyhock seeds that my dad gave me, and they're still pretty small too. I may have made a mistake planting them so late, but we'll see. Oh, and there's another green pumpkin. Lemon basil is finally growing. And there is a new surprise, which is an avocado tree volunteering in my chive pot. I am finally getting some ripe tomatoes at last. I've been putting some cherry tomatoes in the dehydrator, and I think I can use those for a variety of things. I saw where someone mentioned that they had dehydrated tomatoes and then ground them up to use when they needed tomato paste, which is an interesting idea because I don't think I have any jars small enough to can the amount of tomato paste that I generally use. It's usually not even a half cup, so that's an interesting idea. But I think for now I'll leave the dehydrated tomatoes the way they are in the bags and then just see how that goes as I need them. Got several new sugar baby watermelons on the vine. I did pull that big one yesterday because I just couldn't wait. I couldn't tell if it was ripe or not. I thought it might be, and I pulled it and it wasn't. So that went into the compost, and I was kind of disappointed about that. But these other ones are coming along. That one toward the back has been there for a while, but this one just kind of appeared out of nowhere and got big pretty quick, so I'm hoping to get a nice crop of those. One of the bigger changes, besides finally putting the cardboard down in the walkways, which is helping to suppress the weeds, I took out the beans that were here. No, I still have my yard-long beans. They are still producing really well, and I've got several marked to save for seeds. That right there is the second late planting of corn, which is pretty pitiful. But I'm going to let it go, see what it does. Down here, where I had the black beans, the wax beans, and pinto beans, you can see I have taken out all the plants. Through here, I planted some daikon radishes. Never grown those before, so that'll be interesting. Here where this dark brown spot is, I planted some parsnips, and I see that something has been walking through there. That looks like deer prints to me. And on the very end here, I planted the Super Schmelz kohlrabi. I know I said I wasn't going to plant kohlrabi again, but I couldn't help myself. These kohlrabi came from Baker Creek, and they are gigantic. If I get some, hooray. If I don't, I think I really will give up. You want me to put you down? Okay. The corn is tasseling. I actually got out here and hand pollinated this just because I don't trust the small number of plants that I have. This corn, the germination was really, really bad, and I'm not sure why, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'll get what I get, and next year I probably won't try to plant any. I don't have the space. But the first okra is coming in, and I'm happy with the size of this patch. It looks like it's going to be pretty productive. There's some more in there. I don't know if you can see it, but it is there. And when I was in here pruning and restaking the tomatoes, which really needed doing because these guys were just a mess all over the ground, I found a Jubilee watermelon. There are actually at least 2 of these, so that's pretty exciting. I do love watermelon. I'm actually thinking about experimenting with some dehydrating the watermelon. I don't know if it's got too much water, if like you try to make fruit leather out of it, if it's just going to shrink down to barely anything, but I thought it might be worth a try. How awesome would it be to have watermelon in the middle of the winter? It was actually vine ripened in your own garden. I've actually got a few parsnip sprouts. Out of all the seeds I planted, though, I was hoping I'd see more, but I'll take what I can get, given the trouble I've had with parsnips. The dill is going to seed. Oh, and my neighbor brought me 3 really big heads of mammoth dill seeds, which I have cleaned up and put in a plate to dry out. And then I will plant those next year, and I'm pretty excited about that because I like to make a lot of dill pickles. And dill just smells really wonderful. Plus it brings in a ton of pollinators. Well, I was going to show you this tomato plant, but all I can see is that squash in the camera. Let me see if I can move it. That's not a whole lot better. But what happened here was, this is the Cosmic Eclipse tomato. It had 3 tomatoes on it, and something came and ate this and ate some of the other leaves off down there and ate all of the tomatoes that were on this plant. They weren't even on the ground, knocked off. They were just gone. It has made one more, so I might get to taste one after all, but I don't know. Because this Cosmic Eclipse plant down here was so decimated, I just pulled it out. It hadn't made a tomato, and it didn't look like it was going to. It didn't have any blooms or anything. So I pulled out the plant altogether, tossed it in the compost, and set one of the rooted suckers in its spot. I also did that down on the end with one of the Brandywine tomato plants because those tomatoes were just wonky. I don't know what was going on with them. They were all fused. There were 2 and 3 fused together, and it stopped blooming also. So I just took it out and put one of the rooted suckers in its place. Everything else seems to be looking pretty good. And as far as the tomatoes go, I did have to prune quite a bit. They were looking a little blighty on the bottom, and I had to restake a lot of them, tie them up again. And you can see the watermelon and the squash, or that crazy pumpkin, are just invading. It is truly crazy how big this pumpkin has gotten. And it still only has one fruit. There's my friend the bee. So this thing, whatever it is, the thing that's supposed to be a Cherokee tan pumpkin, is getting ripe. Now, whether it actually is or not, I really don't know. But it's getting ripe, even though the plant has no other fruit. So I'll find out what it tastes like. One way or the other, I guess. And another good surprise, new thing down here, is more Tennessee dancing gourds on the vine. I'm so excited about these, y'all. They're so cute. With the exception of the last two sections of the bed, I did get it all filled in with new soil, and I've planted carrots, onions, charred lettuce, radishes, leeks, there's probably something else that I'm forgetting. I always have to look at my map. But nothing is sprouting yet, but we'll see how that goes, if I can keep the cats out of it. One of the problems with having 4 cats is they think my raised bed is a giant litter box. So after the cosmic eclipse incident, I brought more Irish Spring soap up here and put it on this end of the tomatoes. But as y'all saw the hoof prints in the dirt over there, it doesn't seem to be working very well. I haven't seen any damage on the tomatoes though that's new, so maybe they walk up here and then decide to leave. Don't know. The second big project I did in the last few days, actually I did this yesterday, is in the squash patch. The bugs, as you know, have arrived. Now I've been picking, squishing, spraying, and they seem to be pretty well under control. I do see a few yellow leaves in the pumpkins still that I need to trim off and check for bugs to make sure that they're not getting out of control. But I don't think there's really any way to keep them out. But one of the other problems that started was powdery mildew. And I know that people have used baking soda, Epsom salts, diluted milk, all that stuff to spray them with. And my main concern was that even if I sprayed them, they still wouldn't be getting any ventilation. So I went on a pruning spree again. This is the 4th time that I have pruned these squash, and they're still producing. The summer squash are still producing very well. A couple of the winter squash had made 1 or 2 squashes and then just kind of fizzled out. So as I was pruning, the ones that I realized I was going to have to cut so much off of that they probably wouldn't survive, and they weren't doing anything anyway. Not only did they not have any more fruit, they didn't have any new blooms. I just yanked them out. And yesterday I replanted and put in some more round zucchini for a second round crop, and also the lemon squash. So we'll see how those do. Perhaps as the summer goes on, the bugs will move along when there's no mature plants for them left, and we'll see. And of course, my pretty princess has to make her appearance, don't you? She's so rotten, y'all, it's pitiful. Looking up through there, you really can't tell how much I pruned. That's how crazy these vines are. But I did take out a considerable amount of stuff. I actually filled up my little garden wagon completely, piled up to the top and over with squash leaves. And they wilted back pretty bad yesterday afternoon, but it was so stinking hot that, you know, I wilted too. So these look like they're bouncing back really well. I have to admit though, I think I killed one. That was winter squash, and I did pick a couple. I got 3 spaghetti squashes and 2 acorn squash, and then 2 of those plants I pulled up, and a couple of them I left just because they were still going strong. You can see that guy right there with almost all of the bottom leaves have been cut off, and it is just sprouting out and making more blooms. So I'm going to let that one go. Over there next to it in the bare spot is where I planted the next round of round zucchini. The ones over there on the side are still producing, but if I can get another group going, that would be awesome, because I really like those. These yellow crooknecks just continue to bloom and bloom and bloom. Another new thing is here in the cucumber / cantaloupe grouping. I have been getting cucumbers out of here, and I actually missed a couple and they got really big. But it's kind of hard to get in there and look through, especially in the morning when I generally do the harvest. I really need to remember to come back in the afternoon and check again, because if I'm going to make pickles, I don't want to have these cucumbers getting too big. Now, I'm not objecting to slicers at all because they're wonderful, but I do want to have some pickles to put up for the winter. I have put up about 14 pints of pickles so far, squash pickles and dill pickles with cucumbers. So that's pretty cool, and I've been dehydrating some squash. I will continue to dehydrate some of the cherry tomatoes and probably more squash, just because I don't have a big freezer and I don't have room for everything in the freezer. Although I did throw some squash in the freezer, the dehydrated stuff will be fine for making soup and things like that in the winter. And if I do the zucchini, I'm thinking I can probably rehydrate that and make zucchini bread with it. So that'll be an experiment for later on. And these guys are new too. This spaghetti squash has actually produced a couple of ripe fruits already, but it's got several others. And that's pretty great because I really do like spaghetti squash. And this one over here is the sunshine squash that is actually climbing the heartnut tree. So I have to remember next year to put something in here that's not going to vine a whole lot, because I don't want the tree to have problems. And these winter squash have been fairly notorious this summer for strangling their neighbors. So I'll have to figure out where to put them. Now these squash are not that big. They are just about a handful. They are a winter squash, although I haven't grown them before and I've never eaten one. So if we like it, I'll consider growing it again, as long as I have somewhere I can maybe trellis it, because these are small enough they can probably go on a trellis. There is one more fruit over there, and it's still blooming off in the distance where it has run to. And we are finally getting bell peppers. I thought this thing was never going to produce. I thought it was just going to bloom forever. But there they are. I have bell peppers. I have been harvesting some of these tomatillos, and I'm going to make some salsa verde with those, see if we like them. the initial impression was that it smells like a tomato mixed with a pepper, which is an interesting idea. And for people who like both of those things, it'll be great, but I'm a little dubious about it now because I don't like peppers. So I'll have to taste it and see what I think. I've also got an Atris pepper coming on. It's a pretty good size already, and it's still green. These are the ones that are the long red stuffing peppers. So we'll see how that comes along, and I'll have to get a taste opinion from the other person who actually likes them. There's another one coming up. This one's blooming. And I thought this plant was one of the yum yum peppers from the seeds that I saved last year. So either I got my seeds mixed up, I got my labels mixed up when I had the seedlings going, or something, because this is obviously a cayenne. It's got quite a few peppers on it. So that's what's new around here, and things are moving forward and everything is looking pretty good. We'll still fight those squash bugs for as long as it takes, or until the vines die and I have to sacrifice them. But, you know, sometimes you got to have devastation in order to practice preservation. And that's why there is a giant pile of squash leaves over in the compost pile right now. I do hope that the second crop of squash comes along. It'll be a few days probably before they sprout, but if the bugs move on as the summer winds down, then maybe I'll get a decent second crop too. I'm not disappointed with the way these squash have been producing. I'm just disappointed that the bugs are moving forward as fast as they are, and I should know that's going to happen because it happens every time, and you just do the best you can and try to stem the tide, I guess. But I'm still optimistic. I'm getting a good harvest. I am preserving squash, which will make me very happy in the wintertime. And I hope that all of your gardens are being extremely productive and that you have more than you wished for and a bountiful harvest. And I thank you for watching, and thanks to everyone who's subscribed, and keep gardening. Till the next time. Gosh, these beans are getting really long. Oops, there's a bug bite.